So this will be the most boring of the packages that you'll see here today, and there's a reason for that, but it's also the one that you, if any of you move into professional software, you will use it. There's zero chance that you won't, and if you don't, then you're implementing a lot of stuff by hand that you shouldn't, and that's what these libraries are about. It's not reinventing the wheel. So logging, it's better than printing, and we will see why. So logging is your way of recording what's going on with your program. So the vast majority of programs now aren't being run in front of you, they're being run on a server somewhere else, and you can't see the terminal that they're running on. Most of them won't have a terminal. They're running as a system process or a daemonized process, so they're in the background. You have no idea what's going on. And if you've got something in production and something goes wrong and you've got no idea what was going wrong when it happened, you're in a bit of a hard place. And you end up doing what I did on my first week on the job. I got dragged into a project where they said, we've got a 20 square metre LED sign that we want to rotate 3 times a day to face the traffic. And not knowing that logging existed, I decided, oh yeah, I can implement that. We got our little I/O board, hooked it up to a motor with enough torque to shear a person in half if you do it the wrong way. And we put it out on site, and oh shit, things went wrong. So if I wanted to see what was going wrong, I needed to be out there 3 times a day, at 5 in the morning, at 2 in the afternoon, and at 7 at night. So far from optimal. And so I took it back to the office. I said, what do? I don't work with any other developers. I'm the only one in the office, so I didn't really have someone to ask. But doing a bit of research, I came across an article that basically described the difference between printing, which is what I had been doing in the office to test it, and logging, which is what everybody else in the world does to log what's happening. So logging is so important that it's part of the Python standard library, like JSON that you saw before. It's unglamorous, it's boring, but it is necessary. When to use it? Basically, any time that you're not writing a command line application that someone's going to be interacting with is when you need to be using logging. So this is basic logging. Don't be scared. There's a lot of code on there at the moment, but it's not doing very much, and it's not very complicated. So you've got the basic tenet of logging is that you only implement as much stuff as you need to get what you need to get done. And if you want it to be basic, it can be as basic as the top there. So you import logging, and you do logging. There are 5 different levels of log messages, and if you run into a bit of an issue if you do what I've done up there. You'll see logging.debug, logging.info, logging.warning, error, and critical. So that's escalating seriousness, basically. By default, there's a little bit of a weird tick in the logging package that says that we're not going to show you any logging messages that are below a warning level in severity. So you can see there in red, we've got the output. If you just implement logging like that with the logging, debug, info, warning, critical, error, you're only going to see warning, error, and critical pop up on your screen. So without any configuration at all, it's just going to print it out to standard out, which is your normal terminal output that you're used to, if you're not using the REPL. So if you want to get a little bit more fancy, you want to save your log in a file, which is what everybody does. You just need to do one line of configuration. You do logger equals logging.basicconfig. This is the simplest way you can do it. File name, you choose a file name, anything you like, and you choose a level. Now, if you choose a level that's below the default level, which is logging.warning, then you can see everything that happens, which is really handy when you're in the office, but it does give you the ability to sort of filter out things that aren't severe. And that's why those levels exist, and that's why it defaults to the logging.warning. So that will show you, we've got the output down the bottom here. So if you go to the file basic.log, you will see these after this has run. So if you think about your programs that you've written for CSSE 1001, or anywhere else in Python where you've used a print statement to sort of tell you what's going on, you'd be using a logging statement with an appropriate level of severity in its place. And one of the benefits of that is that you can send it multiple places at once, which is getting a little bit more advanced. So this is part of the actual, the first version of the actual production code that went into making this 20 square meter LED sign rotate 3 times a day. And you can see there's about 10, 15 lines of configuration. You can do it in less, but I did it for clarity. I did it that way. And you can see I've used a few new things. The biggest thing is these handlers. So you do use different handlers to send it to different places. So the first handler I use is the command line handler, so that it is still sending it to the terminal. So if you're there, you can still see it, like I was at 5 and at 2 and at 7. And then I've also got a second handler where it was going to send it to a log file that I could read, so I didn't have to be there at 5 and 2 and 7. And you can see I've used a formatter where you give it some sort of templating language, and it understands that and puts it into a form that matches up with that template. So you can see I've got ASC time and then message. I don't know how clear this is for you guys all the way back there, but in the formatter, yeah, we've got ASC time and message. So you can see the output down here. We've got the timestamp and the message that I put at the time to sort of indicate what was going on at that moment. So you can see I don't have any log.error, so it's all log.info, but I have set the logging level to logging.debug so that I could see everything. And the difference with the file handler that I've used compared to the basic config that was used in the last example is that it implements something that would be not impossible, but a pain in the ass to implement again on your own, which is basically if you've got a small device with a limited amount of memory and it's constantly plugging these logs into a file, eventually you're going to run out of memory. So the rotating file handler, which is what I've used, basically says you put an upper limit on this on the size of this log file. You tell me how many backups you want. It'll automatically do backups. And you once we start exceeding that size, that maximum size that we've specified, it's going to override that so that you don't fill it up and it doesn't crash. Yeah, so that's logging. I did tell you it was boring, and it is boring, but it is necessary. So to make up for it being so boring, I've got some other information. These slides will be made available, I assume, on the UQCS website for you guys to go and look at later, if you like. So I've got some resources. There are the logging documentation, a few tutorials, the argument for logging, which is was put forward by the author of requests. He's a big deal in the Python community. And other libraries. So Slumber is basically, it takes what Mitch was doing with the API access and breaks it down, makes it even more simple. It uses requests to do that, but and I've used that in my job to interact with RESTful APIs and get information back to track the live status of computers that run LED screens and that sort of thing. Pillow is image manipulation. There's a bit of a nasty backstory with that. In the Python standard library, same sort of thing as request. Someone else did it better than how it's implemented in the standard library. and Django, which is what I spend most of my time on. It's like Flask, but it's like the Python of Flask, where it's a web framework, but it has everything built in. So if you want emails or users, like you want to create an authentication system, it's already there for you. You just have to read how to implement it. And then I just wanted to plug the Python editor that I use, that you can also use and get for free while you're studying, PyCharm. It's great, and the platform that it's built on you can also use when you move on to courses in other languages like Java. They have similar products with the same layout, basically.